All right, everybody. Welcome to the first installment of the WEMTA Webinar Series. My name is John Spike, and I am the chair of the Professional Development Committee for WEMTA, which is the Wisconsin Educational Media Technology Association. And we're going to be doing these throughout the year, and we are just very excited today to have Josh Gauthier joining us. He is a Google certified trainer, Google certified innovator, and he's going to be talking about sliding into design with Google Slides today. So you're going to get some tips and tricks about how to enhance presentations, whether you're giving them or whether you're assisting staff or students in giving them. Just a couple other things I want to mention today. At the end of the session, you will have the opportunity to get a certificate of completion. You're just going to want to be looking for a keyword that will be shared at the end of the presentation, so be keeping an eye out for that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Josh. If you have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the chat, and then we'll ask Josh at the end of the session the questions that you submit. This will also be archived on wemta.org, and we'll be pushing out that specific URL in the days to come. So Josh, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
All right, will do. Okay. Well, it is great to be the first one. I am honored that John asked me to do this, and hopefully I am just the beginning of a long line of educators who are going to blow you away with their amazing knowledge. John has quite a wide network, so I don't doubt that there's going to be some awesome stuff shared through this series. So I hope that what I shared today you will find useful for your situation, whether personally or for use with your students. And actually, that's where this came from. Is recently I was doing some team teaching with a teacher, and they were going to have students create some slideshows, and they wanted to remind them of some things they could do. And I already had a pretty firm idea of things they were taught and were using when they were at the previous grades. So I wanted to go a different direction and maybe sneak in some new things, assuming that they knew the basics, which of course they did. So that's what this was about. It was things that they probably didn't know about as students that would be useful as far as slides and as far as design, because I think design is often forgotten. So that's where I want to start. You can see I have a link there at the bottom. My computer wants to update, which is fun. All right, here we go. So at the bottom, if you want to grab that link, then you can have this slideshow to use. Just make sure you give me just the tiniest bit of credit. That's all I ask. So I am Josh Gauthier. I am a technology training specialist in the school district of De Pere, not to be confused with West De Pere. We're on either sides of the Fox River. And I've been there now. This is my 5th year. And that's my contact information. Email or Twitter is probably the easiest way to reach me. And as John said, I'm a Google certified trainer, Google certified innovator. Basically, that means I took some tests and somebody liked a video I made once. But in all seriousness, those are great programs that I highly recommend that anybody take the time to go through, because the opportunities that come out of that, mainly the ability to the opportunity to collaborate with some really brilliant people, is what has made it worthwhile for me to pursue those things and to stay active in those communities. So if you have any questions about that, I can share with you what I know. And John himself is actually a certified innovator, and he's gone through it very recently, just this past summer. So he would be a great person to talk to about kind of the newest format of it. All right, so this is where I started with the students. And this was a middle school class, 7th grade. And I needed something to grab them. So I decided to rearrange the acronym that I've used previously in a way that may be more engaging for them. You may not choose to go that route, so you can rearrange the letters however you want. But these are the slide design principles or design principles in general that I have generally adhered to when I've talked to kids. So the first one up there is contrast. I think we all know what contrast is. It's the difference in things. So it's how we have a dark color for our text and then a light colored background. It helps things pop. The same way that unintentionally a link will be different looking than the rest of the text. So it'll be underlined, it'll be blue. That contrast is what really provides a good visual pop for the person who's looking at it. Often what I will tell students with contrast is this means do not use a picture as your background. In my world, that's a big no-no. I really don't like that personally, and aesthetically, it just doesn't really work. There might be some things that you can do to pull that off, which I'll show a little later. But generally speaking, contrast is difference in color, sharp difference. Maybe look for that color wheel to see what you want to use, but that's contrast. Repetition, especially for slides, means that you're repeating similar things over and over again. So as we look through my slideshow, you can see here we have similar font. To go through, it's the same font. Similar border. So if you look at those corners, same corners as I go through. So it's elements that are repeated over and over again that give this sense of cohesiveness. And so as that relates to students, it means not using a million different fonts, keeping a consistent amount of colors, so maybe 2 or 3, and just repeating those elements over and over again. Alignment, I always use a car example, and it doesn't work because they're in middle school and they don't drive. But the idea of alignment is things are organized, they're in a line, and that helps the reader, the person who's viewing, make sense of what you put on the screen in front of them. So in this case, is really simple, but C dash contrast or A dash alignment, they're lined up. The A goes with the alignment, so it's very clear what is happening there. But it's also the alignment in terms of everything center aligned. So that makes that all organized. It's aligned across an invisible line in the center. And I'm going to exit out of the presentation and just show you here, you may not know about this, but as you move objects around, you get these red lines as well that help you align your slideshow. So you can make things organized so they can be centered or lined up with other objects. And the last one on there is proximity. That means things that go together are near each other. Things that don't go together aren't near each other. So the topic of your slide at the top is what the slide is about. That the P for proximity is near proximity and not near contrast. That the picture you're using has a caption near it or makes sense on the slide that you're using it. Really important lessons for making much better slideshows. And whether we like it or not, I think this is going to be a common thing students do, and it's great to have them realize that this is a visual aid. This is not all their text in one spot. If you're looking to learn more about these slide design principles, if you're really wanting to share this with your students or with your staff, this link that I have on here will take you to a really quick read, 6 pages, that gives you some great examples that are very vivid that go through contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. So that is a great resource. Like I said, I've been using that for quite a while, and I've always make a point to share that with students. All right, so diving into how do you go about using these design principles in Google Slides? Well, the first thing I like to show is the Slide Master. And the Slide Master is not an exercise equipment. It is a little hidden menu within Google Slides. If you use PowerPoint, PowerPoint also had a Slide Master. So if I go into View, I can see the master here. And you can see all the layouts we have listed on this left side right here. So if I go into this top one, the master, that means anything I put on this slide is going to go on all my other slides. So for instance, one thing I like to do that's simple is I just like to pull out these shapes and use these to make some type of a border on my slides. And this allows me to customize it, to make it my own thing. And it's really quick to do. So these, for instance, are just corners that I just drew out and then just lined up with the corners. However, one that I do like to have fun with on occasion is the cloud tool is a good one. I believe there's also the ability to do a scribble in here. Here we go. So I often like to do a scribble line that I can fill in. I may need to, maybe it's not scribble line that I wanted. I think it's polyline. But essentially, to kind of make my own shapes, if you've got a steady enough hand to do that. So all these different shape options in here that I like to use for creating my own designs. So my favorites include this cloud. I like using that. I like using these corners. They're really nice to use. And the scribble and polyline tools to make slightly different looking shapes. So that's one thing you can do. So what will happen is this. Let me just do this scribble again. You got a question there, John? Oh.
Nothing yet, so I'll keep you posted if we get any questions coming in.
Okay, thought I heard you blip there a little bit. So if I draw with that tool there, I'll make this something bright and egregious, like that. There we go. Now that's going to show up on every single slide that I made. So that's kind of the power of the slide master, is that it goes on everything. It saves you work. Obviously, that looks horrendous, so we're not going to use that. The other thing that this is great for, you can put stuff on the slides like the background, but you can also change the font all at once. So if I went in here, I'm going to hold Control and click both of these sections. Then I can go into my font, and I can just choose something different. And then it's changed on every single one of my slides. Of course, that has some consequences when you've got a font that changes, that makes it bigger, and then it's out of whack, so always something to keep track of, but that's something you can do right there in the Slide Master. So I'm going to Control-Z, undo that, and leave it as is. So play around with that. Try and have fun making your own shapes and different looks for your slides. Now, if you don't want to take the time to do that, now sometimes it can be quick, sometimes it may take a bit longer. So if you don't want to go through that, there's a great resource called Slides Carnival that you can go to that has a bunch of free Google Slides templates that you can use that have all these different layouts for making a nice looking slideshow and breaking away from what's built into Google Slides. So you can just go out here, Halloween Day of the Dead presentation, Halloween, at least tomorrow as of recording. So we can go and preview and download. You can use as Google Slides theme, and then it allows you to make a copy of the document. And then you have this copy in your Google Drive. So how do you utilize this? Well, you can either build off of this, or you can just crib the design. So if I go to my slideshow, I'm going to click in the gray here to get this menu up top. I can go into Theme on the right side, and here's all of the built-in themes for Google Slides. Down below, you have Import Theme. If you click on that, you can use any presentation within your Google Drive. You can use that theme in what you have. So if I select that one, it's going to ask me what type of theme inside of that slideshow I want. I'm going to import it. And then, if all works well, it should update all of my slides automatically, like it just did. Now, that has some unintended consequences, like I can't read much there, but it's pretty quick and easy to get a new theme into your slideshow. So that's Slides Carnival, and that's one that's a really nice resource that's out there to break away from the stock themes that you see a million times within Google Slides. All right, so love the Slide Master, use the Slide Master, and definitely can save time, especially when it comes to little tweaks, like I want the font the same on all 20 of my slides. Right, and when it comes to design, it's important to match up colors. So one of the things that I do is I create bathroom posters at my school for just little things I want to share about, and it's kind of a nice way to get some PD out into different unique spaces into the building. And on one, I had a sandwich, and the color was like this yellow, and I wanted to use that color again in the slides. Ergo, the Color Pick Eyedropper extension. So it's, you can see my cursor. I'm up near my extensions. It's this colorful one here, Color Pick Eyedropper. When I click on that, I get a crosshairs, and as I go over anything on my screen that is visible below the bookmarks bar, it will tell me what the code is for that color. So if I click on it, I can have that code to copy, Control C. And then if I want something to be that color, I just have to put it in. So where do I do that? So if I grab a shape, let's say this is rectangle, I'll draw this here. I can go into the fill, and then I can go into custom, and I can drop it right there. And there it goes. I can do the same with the border tool as well, the pencil, custom, paste it there. Now you're matching colors. So that is really useful in making sure that your colors are even. If you're doing a presentation, let's say for your school, and you want to make sure you have the same colors as your school, go to your school website, use the color pick tool, and then you'll be able to grab the school colors off the website and use it in your presentation, which is a really nice touch. And it may seem like a little thing, but I feel like the little things can go a long way. It shows good attention to detail. I don't like that. I'm going to get rid of that for now. So that is a Google Chrome extension. You can grab it from that link there. Otherwise, you can search for Color Pick Eyedropper. All right, related to that is this one here. So I mentioned at the beginning that I do not like having pictures as backgrounds or putting text over pictures in general. It's not one of my favorite things unless you're making a meme. But if you must do it, you can't avoid it, it just has to happen, then that's where transparency comes in. So when you create anything that has a fill color, you can change the transparency on it. So case in point, if I were to put in some text, I'm going to put in a text box right here. There we go. There's a text box. Hello, I'm going to make it a little bigger. All right. And then I'm going to find an image. I'm going to open up Unsplash. I'm going to actually talk about this one in a second. So Unsplash is an add-on that allows me to pull photos. They're all copyright-free images. That's what I love about them. So this is cool. All right, so I'm going to grab this image. It's going to be huge. So I'm going to shrink it down. And then I'm going to right-click, order, send to back. So now I have that text there. Now, granted, that has a really nice spot up top where you can put it. But what if you had the text right there? It pops off, but not quite as much as it could. So what can we do about that? Well, we can fill this background with something like, I don't know, let's use white. Okay, but now we can't see the picture. So instead of just using white, we can go into custom. We can still use white, but then this right slider, we slide that down. We can make it more transparent, and now we've got that bit of a fog over our text. So that's a way that if students have to absolutely use a picture as a background, or if you absolutely have to use that, you can get away from that by simply making the background transparent, which helps it pop, helps provide that contrast that we talked about earlier, which is the exact same thing. Made that box transparent so you can see the text underneath it. All right, moving along. And then I just showed you how to use order So you can send things to the front or to the back or through different layers forward and backward. Unlike Google Docs, Google Slides supports layers. So that way you can have many different things and get them organized in the order you want them to. That is why in many cases, I recommend using Google Slides instead of Google Docs for certain things if you want a lot of pictures. So for making posters and things like that, because you have so much more flexibility in the platform for putting things where you want them to go. So you can get to the Arrange menu either by going up to Arrange on the top or by right-clicking an item. All right, now we're getting into add-ons. So there's some really great ones in Slides. I'm only going to mention a few as they relate to design. I'll have these in reverse order here, but one of them is Unsplash. So Unsplash is a website that has royalty-free images. So if you know a lot about copyright, you know that a lot of the images on the web that we can just freely search for in Google actually are protected by copyright, and our students and we should not be using them without permission. But there's lots of great websites and places where you can get awesome pictures that are copyright free to the extent that you don't even need permission to use them, which is really nice. And in some cases you can use them, but you just need to cite the source. So Unsplash is one you don't have to cite the sources. You just grab the images that you want. It's a website, but there is an add-on within Google Slides where you can pull them up without even having to leave, which is really nice. So you can search for anything that you want. I'm still sad that baseball season is over, so I like looking at baseball and thinking of what was the season before. And then you can just click and put them in. So pretty simple process there with Unsplash. The other one I mentioned here is icons. Depending on the purpose of your presentation, you may really need to use some icons. There's a couple of different ones. There's icons by Noun Project, and then there's insert icons for slides. The insert icons for slides is the one that I've used. And this one is completely free. I think the other one has a limit. But you can see all the different types of icons in here. So depending on what you're trying to say, you can use these icons to tell your story. And the best part about these is that you can choose the color. So if you have a color saved, like using that color picker, it makes it really easy to get these things themed the color you want them to be. So no excuses on not getting your colors matched up. All right, and then there's another place to get images. There are plenty of resources out there, so your students do not have to go to Google. Pixabay. We have this listed on our LMC website, so that might be a good place to put this link if you don't already have it. But it also has royalty-free images of a huge variety for students to use. So that's Pixabay. All right, so that's really the main focus of design. So all of those things that I shared will hopefully help you and your students create some more beautiful presentations. Then I just want to add in a couple of odds and ends here that you may not know about of things that you can do within Slides. So first one is this. You can actually insert an image from the camera. So if you go up to the Insert menu and go to Image, you have the option to use your camera to take a picture. And you can take a bunch of pictures and then click on the one on the right menu that you want to insert. In this case, here's my beautiful artwork that I can now include in Slides. So really great, for instance, if you are using Slides as an interactive math notebook, students can do the math by hand on paper, where it's a little bit easier than working on the computer if they're having to do some calculations and write some things out. But then they can take a picture of that work and include it in here, and then have a digital version that's easy for them to look at, easy for them to share with the teacher, and a great place to store those kinds of things. This one is one of my favorites. Before this came about, there were a lot of different ways that you could go ahead and do something like crop a video. But now you don't have to do that because you can do it right within Slides. So when you insert a video, up at the top, you have an option called Format Options. And then there's a section on the right which says Video Playback. And then you can do things like set the start and end time of a video. So you can crop it to show just the beginning and end of what you want. And then you can also choose to have it autoplay when presenting and mute the audio, which are both really nice. So if you're doing a presentation, or if your students are doing one and they're giving it live and they're going through, then they don't have to go over and have somebody click play and have somebody click stop. They can just stand and deliver and keep the thing rolling. The crop thing, though, is so nice because then you can just show the parts of the video you want to show and have it set up ahead of time. You don't have to watch the whole thing. All right. This one is great. I don't know how often anybody else uses it or if this is the first time you've heard of it, but you can change the size of a Google slide. So if you go up to File and then go to Page Setup, it might be listed as widescreen or standard, one of these three. But if you go into Custom, you can actually change the size of the canvas and make it inches, centimeters, points, or pixels. So if you use inches, the left side is the width and the right side is the height. And you can change that to whatever you want. So if you want this to be a piece of paper, a letter style piece of paper, you can put that in as 8.5 by 11. When you click OK, now you have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. When you print it out, it will print exactly like that on a piece of paper. So if you're trying to mimic something you want to look like a document in slides, this is a great way to do that, especially if it ends up being printed out. I actually, the aforementioned bathroom posters that I make those in slides as well. So that is where I do all of my posters because I can do whatever I want in these. I don't have to use some other third-party content creator to make them. And then they're really easy to export in high resolution and get the look that I want them to have. Okay, but for this, that just looks not great. But that's how you can change that. One other thing that's really useful is if you go into pixels, and I use this more with Google Drawing, but basically Google Slides is Google Drawing, except you can have multiple Google Drawings that make a slideshow. You can use pixels. So one thing that I get asked about a lot is banners for Google Classroom. And one thing I make a lot are custom banners for Google Forms. And they need to be 800 by 200 pixels. And you can do that and make custom ones right here within Slides or Drawings. And if you did that and you wanted this to be your banner, you would just have the slide activated that you want, File, and then you go to Download As, and then you can choose PNG. I usually do PNG, especially if I have a transparent background, because then that shows through on a PNG. All right. And then if you want to loop a slideshow, that's where you need to publish it to the web. That's where that comes into handy. So it's not really a stock feature within Slides where there's not a quick menu to do it. You have to go and publish, and you actually get a separate link. So that's underneath File. And then you have Publish to the Web. And then you can get the link here, and you can set the advance in this section, however many seconds you want it to go. You can choose to start the slideshow as soon as it loads and restart after the last slide. That's what's going to allow it to loop. And then when you publish, you can get the link there, and then you can also get the embed code here, and you can choose which size that you want for your embedded version. When you do that, so let's say I click Publish, you're going to get this link. One thing that I want to point out to you is this. If you're using the link or the embed version and you want to change how often they advance, there's a section here that shows you the number that the delay is in milliseconds. So in this case, 3 seconds is equal to 3,000 milliseconds. So if you wanted to have that happen every half a second, then you would do 500 there. There's actually some pretty impressive stop motion animation Google Slides that can be created by just tinkering with that delay and then having several hundred slides that have little incremental changes to make that happen. All right. So if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me. I love sharing about really a lot of different things, definitely about Google, but I love just finding ways to help our students be more creative and give them the tools to do so. And I think by teaching them some of these things that they can do with Google Slides, that helps unlock a little more of that creativity that we want them to have. So if you do want to get in contact with me after watching this, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Mr. G Fact of the Day, or you can email me at mrgfactoftheday@gmail.com. I love to help. I love to hear when people are doing things that I've shared about and I found a lot of success and had fun with students in my own schools. And that just makes me happy to hear that those things are happening elsewhere as well.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for sharing. We did have a few questions come in, and I just put in the chat. If anybody who's attending live right now has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get to them. So the first question that I had come in for you is, what is the biggest issue you see when you're working with students? What is the biggest issue you see in student presentations, and how do you address it, or what advice would you give for our viewers to address maybe that issue?
The biggest issue I see, and I think I unshared, so I think you should be looking at me now. The biggest issue that I encounter with student presentations, almost 100% of them, is way too much text on slides. Where a slideshow is a visual aid, and that's something I really try and entrench with them, is this is a visual aid. This is not your presentation. I don't want to look at your back. I want to see your eyes, and it's hard to make eye contact if you're still looking at your slides. I used to use a 6x6 rule, like no more than 6 lines per slide and no more than 6 words per line. But honestly, I've kind of gone to the one sentence rule. Like really, there should not be much text on the slide. Either you have a script or you know that. And the slideshow is just helping you. That's a visual aid that you can refer to. It's helping tell your story, but get the text off of there. The text, that's what you're telling us. If all your text is on the slides, then we don't need you. Like we have it there. We're going to read that. We're not going to listen to you at all. So that would be number one that I see with students.
Perfect. Thank you. Just curious, are there any unique ways you've seen people use that trick you showed about the master slide? The question came in. Kind of unique ways people have used that master slide trick to put things on slides for students that they push out?
That is a great question. I actually haven't seen that. So whoever had that question may have just come up with a new strategy with slides. I know people that have put things on the sides, and then when they share through Google Classroom, every student has a copy, then they have those instructions on the side. But that's a great idea. One thing that I'm thinking of is if you have like a shared slideshow. So let's say you have every student answering something and they're all in one slideshow. You could use the slide master to put out a background so that each slide has the same like structure, and then you can have the text boxes in place for them to fill in their responses. If you're familiar with the Iron Chef style of activity, something kind of like that. But that would be a great way to like lock in the format that you want. Like we need to answer this question here, so like a graphic organizer. But then they can't edit and move that. Especially if you don't teach them about the slide master, then they won't know to look there.
Yeah, great ideas there, and yeah, I'm interested to see what kind of ideas our viewers come up with. Just another one that came in. Michelle said, "Love icon finder. Do you have a clip art recommendation for when an icon won't quite cut it, but a photo maybe is too much? So somewhere in that middle ground of more complex than an icon, but not quite photo."
Sure. Actually, Pixabay, you can search for stock photos within Pixabay. So if you go into Pixabay and you search and you're looking for clip art within there, I usually just search for whatever I want and then add clip art in. So I'm not sharing my screen currently, but I'll pull it up in a second here. Share. All right. So if I search for dog clip art, then I can go through, and then here's what's in Pixabay. Now, once again, this isn't the whole internet, so there's only so many things available within here. But that's one way that you can just do that, is add clip art in. I believe I couldn't find one in Slides, but I'm pretty sure in Docs there is an add-on for clip art that's built within Docs. I can check on that real quick, but that's where I think there is an add-on for it.
Perfect. Thank you. Another one that came in as well. I love this question. What are your feelings on GIFs in presentations?
I often, and I didn't even follow my own advice, I often suggest that every great presentation, of course, must include at least one animated GIF. I mean, I get a kick out of it, but in all honesty, I think it just matters what the theme is and what you're trying to accomplish. I think if you're presenting to the school board, maybe an animated GIF is not the right tone you want to send, but if, let's say, you're principals and you're presenting to incoming parents and you want to show how much fun the middle school is going to be, and I might be speaking from experience of something I showed my principals how to do, but that might be a great case for using an animated GIF to kind of lighten the mood a little bit and help students and parents feel like middle school could be a fun place, and that the principals actually have a sense of humor, which I think is important as a tone to send. So I think it depends on what you're trying to do with your presentation and the audience, of course.
All right, great. I'm glad we got some answers on that age-old question of whether or not to use them. How about this one? Do you have any hacks for getting music in slides, like you might see in PowerPoint?
The only one that I know of that's currently trying to do that is there is an add-on. I believe EdTech team came up with it. It's called Audio Player for Slides. I'm going to go back and share my screen again. So Audio Player for Slides right here. And what it does is if you have an audio file within your Google Drive, you can pull it in and have it play through that panel as you present, which is really cool. Features the ability to loop a song, which is cool. They also just rewrote this as an extension, it looks like. So that's how you would do this now, as I'm reading here. So it looks like an extension is the way to go with audio. The other trick that you could use that is less effective is just have a tiny little YouTube video on each slide that plays the song you want. That's really small, and it auto plays when the slide starts. However, the problem with that is when you change slides, then the music stops and has to switch to something else. So definitely check out that audio player for Google Slides by EdTech team. That looks like it should be an extension now. It was an add-on. It is now an extension. And yes, so there is a link for it. Is there a good place for me to put this link? John?
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. You could put it in the chat, and then we could also include it kind of below the video when we post it on the WEMTA.org website.
Okay, so I'm going to grab the link for everybody. Audio player for Google Slides, and I'm going to throw that into the chat. Okay, cool. Love the questions.
Yeah, just a final shout out to our live attendees. If you've got any other questions, that was the last one that I saw come in. So just a final call. Otherwise, sounds like, Josh, we greatly appreciated having you on tonight. Love the information. I've got tons of ideas to take away. And did you just want to share one more time what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. Twitter's probably the fastest, at Mr. G Fact of the Day. And if you want, you can ask why that's my Twitter handle, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Or you can email me at mrgfactoftheday@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Well, I am just going to, I know it's hard. I'm going to wrestle control away from you here and just going to pull up a couple of last little pieces here. So what I've just got up on the screen here, just want to get a plug in for the WEMTA 2019 conference. And the theme this year is Many Voices, Many Choices. So we're hoping to hear lots of voices there. We're hoping that you are interested and maybe are thinking about presenting, attending, bringing a group to the conference. So if you are interested in presenting, going, finding out more about the WEMTA organization or the conference, go ahead and go to WEMTA.org. And that's also a good plug, too, that Josh's wonderful talk tonight will be on the WEMTA.org website. We'll have a specific link in the near future, but you can get to WEMTA.org and you will be able to find this webinar series. The other thing, too, that's available is if you want something to show your district or your organization that you viewed this particular webinar series, go ahead and go to the URL on the screen right now. So it's bit.ly/WEMTA certificate. So this URL down at the bottom of the screen. And then the keyword that you'll need is proximity. So one of those crap words that Josh brought up in his presentation is the keyword. So you'll put that in to this form and then put in your information, and then you will get a certificate of completion for attending Slide into Design with Google Slides from the talented Josh Gauthier. So without further ado, I want to thank everybody who attended live. I want to thank, of course, Josh for being a wonderful presenter today, and we appreciate your time. So thank you, Josh.
Anytime, John.
Wonderful. All right, everybody, have a great evening, and we'll see you later.